Okay, so I was thinking about a post I made before about not dreaming big, but focusing more on forward momentum and always keeping an eye on what you're doing 3 steps ahead. And after I wrote that and posted that, I kind of wondered, like, man, Will, is that a really I good thing to tell young people? And because you got to dream, you have to dream. I'm not saying you should not dream, but I think people, and this is what I finally realized, I think people focus too much on the dreams, and they obsess about where they are right now versus the dream, where they want to end up. And that delta, that differential between those two, that distance you have to cover, that those changes you have to make, those improvements you have to make to get from here to there, just seem insurmountable. And most times they are insurmountable. But doesn't mean you shouldn't try and you shouldn't dream big. But like I said, what I do personally is look, I want to be there, but I'm going to focus right here. I'm going to pay attention to this, and I'm going to pay attention to that. Where do I want to be? And the reason why I think that's a great idea, because it gives you realistic goals to attain, all the while trying to achieve that. And the whole idea is you will probably never achieve that. But that doesn't mean you can't you can't make these incremental improvements. And for example, honestly, this is what I was thinking about. It's the weather has been crazy good in Washington D.C. And I knew it was going to rain over the weekend. And on Thursday or Friday, when I was doing stuff on the slack line, I decided to seed my yard. I would never think on my birthday, around my birthday, that I would even bother seeding my yard. But I did it because I knew it was going to be warm and it was going to rain. And then this morning, before I went to work, I went ahead and did some weeding on the spots that I seeded. And why am I telling you this? Is because I think gardening is one of the best metaphors for improving yourself. Because my yard, when I bought my house, was a hot mess. But I had bigger and better things to focus on. Raising a toddler. When we moved into our house, he was 6 months old. Keeping a business that was all of 18 months old afloat. Keeping my wife happy. Trying to stay sane. And all this time I had no time to work out. And maintaining my yard was the last thing I needed to do. We had other things to focus on. But around COVID time, I spending so much time in my yard, building my gym, my ninja gym, whatever. I looked at my yard and said, Will, it's still a friggin' hot mess. But you're here and you're standing on a carpet of weeds. Most people, old Will would say, like, that's how it ended up being a carpet of weeds, because I had no time to focus on that. And more importantly, it was like I had like 60, 70, 80% weeds in some of my yard, maybe even 90%. On some points, it was all weeds. And at that point, you're like, that's the entire yard. Well, like, what are you doing? But I had time and I was motivated. And so in between reps, I would start picking up one weed at a time. And sure enough, man, months later, after picking one weed at a time, that yard was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I would have never imagined in a million years it would have looked that way. And so now I'm very motivated to pick those weeds out, because as opposed to being 80 or 90% weeds, now it's like not even 5. And so I can handle 5 in my mind. And that takes a little bit of work. And why lawn maintenance and gardening and taking care of something that grows is a metaphor for life, is because at first it seems insurmountable. It's a seed and dirt, and you want it to grow into this beautiful plant, and you just can't imagine the incremental growth that occurs to get it from a seed or cutting to a beautiful, mature plant. But it just takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And you just got to tend to it. You got to water it. You got to make sure it gets light. You got to make sure it's not being choked out by weeds. And that's why it dawned on me, like, yes, you need to dream big, but you need to focus on these incremental improvements to get there. You know, and every single facet of my life, that's been the case. And that's why I'd like to think I achieved what I've achieved. Like in cycling, sure, I wanted to win a national championship, but that was always a big dream. And so what I did was I sought out improving myself incrementally. And pretty soon, after a while, I'd look back and like, oh my God, dude, Will, you've improved so freaking much. From a guy who had no idea what they were doing match sprinting, to being able to race against the best in the world and not even flinch and totally feel like I belong here. I know what I'm doing, and I can put a world of hurt on someone. and that's huge. And even like my crowning achievement, even it was the 1 kilometer time trial, and I always talk about this because that race has been and always will be my defining. That's what built the most amount of character in myself, because it was so freaking brutal, and I knew I sucked at it, and I knew I was a wimp, and I knew I was a quitter, but I just wanted to improve. And when I made these incremental then to quantum improvements in my kilometer time trial, I was just so proud of myself. It was rarely ever enough to be on a podium, a national championship podium, but I did it. I got on a podium, and with an amazing time for myself. And again, for myself, it was all relative to where I started. So dream big, but focus on those incremental improvements, because that's where that's how you improve your chances to getting to that dream goal. Thanks for watching.